and tell people stories about my feelings. I've never been in a fist fight. I don't know how to change the oil in my car. And when I'm completely naked, it looks like somebody molded stale banana pudding into the shape of a Care Bear. I guess you could say I'm not exactly a man's man. But somehow this has all been working out for my wife until recently when we purchased our first home and I was suddenly thrust into the role of man of the house, a title I was thoroughly unprepared and unqualified for. For example, we spent our first night as homeowners inside of a Home Depot trying to figure out the difference between joint compound and spackle, when my wife kind of sighed and went, "You know, I wish one of us were manly." And I didn't disagree. But only a few days later, I heard my wife screaming hysterically because she had discovered hanging precariously from a tree branch above the path to our front door a 2.5-foot long wasp nest. And when I saw that nest and how upset it was making the woman I love, I immediately experienced this anger, this raw, seething anger. And I had this primal urge to kill every single one of those insects. And it was so irrational and so intense. I was like, wait, is this what testosterone feels like? So I went onto YouTube, which is how I primarily learn about the world around me. And I discovered that these were in fact not wasps, but bald-faced hornets. And based off of the size of the nest, there were approximately 600 of them living above our front door. You know, because it turns out bald-faced hornets are way worse than wasps. They are the most aggressive and lethal insect in North America because they are filled with so much venom they can sting you over and over. And when they sting you, it feels like you got hit by a jackhammer. And if they so much as perceive that you're a threat to their nest, they will chase you for the length of over 2 football fields. And even if you jump into a pool of water, they will wait for you to surface because their thirst for revenge has evolved object permanence. My wife wanted to call an exterminator, but they all wanted like $350, and frankly, that just felt like a tax on account of me not actually being a man. But my wife said, you know, I kind of doubt you're capable of taking on one of Mother Nature's most efficient killing machines, given that you once asked another man to kill a spider, and you audibly cried when I found a tick on your back. Now, ordinarily, that kind of appeal to reason mixed with an uncalled-for emasculating commentary would be enough to win an argument for my wife. But she didn't know that I already had a plan because I'd gone back to YouTube. And I had watched insect snuff films made by real men in like overalls and trucker hats. And after hours of watching them, it felt like their manhood had vicariously rubbed itself all over me. So I went out and I bought 2 cans of insecticidal spray and I waited until nightfall. And with my wife waiting by the front door with 911, literally one button push away, I put on a pair of long underwear and 2 pairs of jeans and a sweater and a sweatshirt and a winter coat and a scarf and a hat and safety goggles. And I waddled outside in a suit of armor made out of a J. Crew catalog. But I hadn't taken into account that it was July and the temperature was in the 90s. So within seconds, the goggles fogged up and I couldn't see anything. But I still aimed those 2 cans of liquid death at that nest, and I thought about how I was going to kill all of those hornets slowly and painfully, and it felt good because I was killing something with my hands like a man does. And then I ran back inside. But the next morning, I discovered I had only managed to kill 3 bald-faced hornets and make approximately 597 of them very angry. And on top of that, because I couldn't see what I was doing, I had missed the nest and instead covered our entire front yard in insecticidal foam, ultimately destroying all the vegetation in our front yard, doing hundreds of dollars in damage. And I got so angry. You know, I bought a 10-foot ladder so I could get right up in that nest. And then I got the bright idea to buy a beekeeping hat because they don't fog up. So I went to REI to buy one, and one of the employees said the guy working in the shoe department was a beekeeper. And I thought, you know, this guy might know something useful. So I found him, and like all middle-aged employees at REI, regardless of gender, he had a ponytail and a fanny pack. And I just launched in, you know. I told him about, you know, the long underwear and the tree and the ladder and the beekeeping hat because it doesn't fog up. And the guy just said, "Stop. What are you talking about? Just sack up and nuke the fuckers." In a life filled with indignities and humiliation, I think my lowest moment may have been when my manhood was questioned by a shoe salesman wearing wool socks and Tevas. And I was so furious. I went home, I put on the clothes, the beekeeping hat, and I set up the ladder, and I started climbing towards the nest. But I didn't realize that the ground under the ladder wasn't level. And so the ladder fell over, and I fell from 6 feet in the air onto the ground. And my wife heard the commotion, and she came outside, and she saw me lying there, and she said, "Would you look at yourself?" For days, all you've been able to talk about are these hornets. And you spent hundreds of dollars, and you've destroyed our yard, and now you're going to go up there and get yourself killed. And when I saw the look on my wife's face, I knew that she was more upset with me than she'd ever been at those hornets. And I knew I had to stop. And also, I really didn't want to try to go back up the ladder because it was scary. Well, it turns out if you can coexist with bald-faced hornets, they're good for your yard. And my yard needed all the help it could get. And that summer, we never got stung once. And my wife never said anything about those hornets again. But in the fall, after it got really cold, and I was pretty sure they were all dead, I went and I got my water hose, and I put it on the power setting, and I knocked that nest down, and I stood over it and said, "I got you." Because my name is John, and I am technically a man.